Hello, everyone. My name is Leticia Hernandez, and I'm the Farms Leadership Coordinator for Monterey and Santa Cruz County. And today we're doing a bi-regional field day with Driscoll's. Dana, would you like to say hi?
Absolutely. Hi, guys. I'm Dana Baker. I'm the Tehama County and North State Farms Leadership Coordinator. Hey, girls, I see ya. And we are very excited to be joining with the Monterey and Santa Cruz and getting to kind of share Driscoll's from our end to their end, which is fun. So thank you to all the Driscoll staff for being here and being such a hands-on participant in this for us and our students. So.
All right, and we'll go ahead and start with student introductions. And we can start with our Monterey and Santa Cruz students. So Jesus Gonzalez, would you like to start us off?
So good afternoon.
Sorry, you can just do your name, grade, and if you want to tell us your favorite berry. That would be
my favorite berry? Okay, so my favorite berry would have to be strawberries because they're the most commonly in our area or in my area. And yeah, my name is Jesus Gonzalez and I go to Gonzalez High School and I'm a junior there.
And Kevin, you'd like to go and introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Well, hi, I'm Kevin Zarate. I'm a senior at SoCal High, and my favorite berry is probably a blackberry, since like they're not as sweet as raspberries, but they're not as sour as like blueberries are. They're just right in the middle. Yeah, I like them a lot.
All right. And Dana, for your students?
Yeah, girls, Corning, if you want to kind of go around your table there.
Hi, I'm Kylie. I am a senior at Corning High, and my favorite berry is a strawberry.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm also a senior, and my favorite berry is also strawberry.
Hi, I'm JC, and I'm a senior at Corning High, and my favorite berry is also strawberry.
We like strawberries.
They're very good.
Good job. And Letty, I don't know, can you see? There's Chris and Gracie. Perfect. All right, so Chris and Gracie, we're just introducing, if you want to introduce your name, your school, your age, and what is your favorite berry?
I'm Gracie Ellie, and I'm from Red Bluff, that's what you said, and and my favorite berries are strawberries.
Hi, my name is Chris Patterson. I'm from Red Bluff High School. I'm a senior, and my favorite berries are probably blackberries because I grew up picking them on the river.
Awesome job. Thanks for being here, guys.
All right, well, we're going to jump straight into the agenda. We kind of have a lot of speakers here today. We're excited to combine both the Driscoll's nursery and the Watsonville site over here and to talk to you about different careers in both regions. So we're going to start with a general overview though, and we're going to have Carmelo Siqueiros start us off. And Carmelo, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe share your favorite berry as well?
Yes, Carmelo Siqueiros, that's my name. I've been in the industry for about 30 years, most of those years with Driscoll's. I am responsible for the business planning on the raspberry side. I work together with Cristal. And my favorite berry is blueberries. Even though I manage the raspberries, I'm biased to blueberries. All right, should I start?
Yes, please, go right ahead.
Absolutely. Okay, well, for all of you out there, I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I was managing a farm for the first 10, 12 years of my career, and then I moved into a little more of the development part of the business on genetics and sort of planning and forecasting. In the early 2000s, I moved to Europe for about 3.5 years. I was already supporting that area quite a bit and flying too many hours, so I decided to live there for a while. So I came back around 2005 and continue doing the kind of business that I'm doing right now, which is planning. What about Driscoll's in general? I will do super brief because I would expect that you probably have had questions, but the company is a little over 100 years old. When the company really took off and started really becoming more active in producing berries was after World War II. The primary berry was strawberries. They started it with a banner variety, which really was a very good tasting variety that was spread it really close in the closed market. There was no way and systems at that time to send fruit to the East Coast. So most of their business was in the West Coast. The raspberry business really started it added into Driscoll's around mid 80s, and more formally in 2000 when the two companies, Sweetbriar and Driscoll's, merged, or essentially Driscoll's bought into Sweetbriar. The blueberries were introduced around 95. I was the individual responsible for bringing most of the non-Driscoll varieties into the system to start learning. And the breeding program for blueberries started there. The blackberries started about 10 years after Driscoll started developing raspberries. The blackberry program started it. We were already marketing blackberries, but they were marketing just genetic varieties, not the Driscoll ones. Today, as we probably all of you know, we have varieties in all berries, the 4 berries. The one that we still use in non-Driscoll's varieties is blueberries, but every other system is just internal. All the varieties that we use are Driscoll's. What do Driscoll's does? It's a little bit tricky because a lot of people associate Driscoll's with producing berries, and the reality is that the only farm that we ever had that we produced berries was a farm that I started in Portugal some years back. I only operated that for about 3 years, and then it was passed to an independent grower. So the model is simple. We are marketing and sales and genetics and nursery, and we contract with growers. We allow them to use our varieties and then we share the profits of the sales and through contracts, essentially. We own the genetics all the time, and we own the fruit, and it's too complicated to go into depth on how we deal with that, but it works pretty well. We know the growers invest a lot more money to produce the berries, so they make a bigger cut of the sales, and that's how it really works. And what we try to do is we review the econ for each side every 2 years or so to make sure that we are being fair with the investments and the rewards. And I mean, the learnings are phenomenal, as some of you may know, and the ones that don't. Driscoll's operates really much across the world, but the largest part of the business, of course, is the continent of America. While we may be in Europe and Africa and China and other places, the bulk of the business is here, and the bulk of employees are also here. Between US and Mexico are the big part of the business. What areas of opportunity there is for young students like yourself that are thinking about getting ready for a career like this? It's really between Driscoll's and growers is everything in between related to farming, from being a farm manager to being a farm operator to being a scientist. I mean, the reality is that Driscoll's is a very progressive company, very, very collaborative company. In other words, you come here and the success of you can only happen if the entire organization is successful. Even ourselves who are focused on one category, in my case was two at one point, I'm ready to give a little bit of room to the other three categories to be successful. My paycheck gets paid with a 4, not with 1. And so that is a very important environment. And it really shows across the communication. And I think Driscoll shows that. It shows this very collaborative, family-oriented sort of mentality and behaviors. And some of us who have been here for a very long time like that to continue. I'm not going to say that there's not been some struggles as we get very smart people coming in from other industries to support us to continue growing. We've seen some challenges on that, but some of us are willing to be strong and push back and try to defend the culture that we created from decades to decades. And I can tell you right now that that we are succeeding. The people that came in and couldn't sort of adapt to our culture are no longer working here. So there's got to be something very important for you to understand why you want to be a part of this company or not. With that, I know I was very brief and I just shade over several things. I'm open for questions if you have any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I know you mentioned that you were doing a lot of traveling, so I think that's something for folks and students to keep in mind, that there can be options for traveling in your career.
Well, there's opportunities for traveling, but there's also opportunities for relocation. If you develop certain expertise, I might be one of the very few that started at that trend to move into places to support the company's growth and development. But after that, I've seen several other co-workers that have done that too. And especially for young professionals, it is really, really important to keep an open mind about working in other places. You learn a lot by exposing yourself to other cultures, other ideas, other ways of doing things, and the opportunity is phenomenal. The traveling can get a little bit old and traveling because it's not vacation. It's just not. It doesn't feel like vacation. You know that you're working, and it's a little bit stressful to travel, especially when you're going to a place where it's not your language and you're dependent on someone else to guide you and to get you where you're gonna be. So, but still, it's fun.
Awesome. And then does anybody have maybe one quick question, or before we move on to our next speakers?
Well, I would like to thank Mr. Carmelo for just like clearing, like, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Just like clearing what Driscoll's was, because like I was always curious how I've seen it around places where I've been, like Driscoll's everywhere, and the fact that they keep like the quality integrity everywhere. I was just wondering like how they were able to manage so good like really good berries everywhere. But now he kind of did the explaining of how that happens. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, and with that, we can thank you, Jesus, for commenting. I have to agree on that. I think next we have James Muller.
See you guys. Good luck with your meeting.
Thank you, Carmelo.
Hello, good afternoon. Start with introducing myself, James Muller. I'm a nursery manager. I've come from Corrupting Young Minds at UC Davis for 10 years. And now I'm really happy to be where I'm at, Northern California, growing strawberry plants. I put together a quick presentation. Let's see if I can make it work. Maybe. Can you see it? Okay.
Yes.
So this is just a quick presentation about the strawberry life cycle, on what I do and where, oh shoot. Hang on. Do you see the 2-slide one or the normal presentation?
2 slides.
Trying to fix it. There we go. So we have, I work solely with strawberries. We've got some blackberries and blueberries in one of our leaf facilities in a greenhouse, but most of my focus in strawberries and strawberry plants. I don't see fruit unless I'm able to go to a fruiting district. So we take the breeders, just starting off really generic. The breeders start by looking at different varieties and different genetics in strawberries. I know some of them, they've actually found a wild strawberry on the beach that's susceptible. It can live in a salty environment. So they've taken that and paired it with a better tasting fruit to see if they can get plants that can withstand some salt. Once the parents are chosen, they rub the 2 flowers together, and that the pollen and the pestils make a fruit. Here, they'll name each one, and by the time it's ripe, they'll actually take it, put a little bit of water, and put it in a blender, and put it into a smear in a tray to grow. Because every seed on a strawberry is a sibling. It's a brother and sister. It's not the same berry that you're eating. After they take that tray, we'll put it out and pull each individual out of the tray and put it in its own cell. And every year we're doing about 100 to 150,000 new seeds planted and growing each year. We take about roughly 100,000 of those and plant them in an individual position in a field. We have for the nursery, we have nursery fields in Central California, Southern Oregon, Northern California, and Pueblo, Mexico. When Camarla was talking about traveling, that's one of the luxuries that we also get too, is we get to travel all over California and Oregon. I've been able to go to Mexico twice to go look at fields and look at the strawberries and the plants that we're growing down there. We do meristem. So the plant naturally will multiply itself, and that's the only way to get the same strawberry plant that you ate the strawberry from is natural reproduction. We're able to take the tip, the runner, you send that to the lab and they pull a meristem out of it and start a fresh new plant in a test tube. So it's cleaner, it should be free of any bacteria, but it is the exact same natural multiplication. We're just taking it away from the environment and making it so it's a cleaner process. Here's a picture of the lab. We put the meristem in a small little tube, and as over about 6 to 8 weeks, then it'll start to grow and become a small plant that we can transplant into a greenhouse or even into soil. All of our plants are naturally multiplied. We'll start off 1 year and one plant could become 100. We can plant those 100 and 100 plants can become 3,000. 3,000 can become 90,000. And then 90,000 could become 1.8 million plants. So in 4 years, we can go from 1 to 1.8 million. We have multiple different structures or growing techniques. We grow in the lab in tissue culture. We are meristem. We have greenhouses. We have screen houses. We do soil. We have substrate that works similar to hydroponics. Here's a picture of one of our screen houses. It's one plant planted in a 4x4 area with the sand as the substrate, and we get a production rate of 200 to 300 daughters per individual plant planted. So here in California, we produce enough plants to fill 13 fields in our foundation level from Northern California down into central Mexico. And then those fields will supply enough. I have the numbers here in a few slides on how many plants we produce and that are shipped all over the world. Here's a pictures of harvest. The top left, it's more by hand. It's called a Lundaby, and it removes the plant from the soil and cleans the dirt from the roots, and then it's picked up by hand and put into garbage cans or gunny sacks. The bottom right is a trommel digger. It's similar to potatoes, and it comes and takes about 3 feet of material away, cleans all the material, all of the soil off of it, and loads it into bins to be trimmed and transported to a trim shed. Here's a trim shed. 300 to 400 people standing in a room, trimming the leaves off and trimming the roots to about 6 inches in length. And on a daily basis, this building full of workers and trim shed employees can go, I think they do about 1.5 million plants a day. So the commercial nurseries, this is where we'll take one of our more sought after varieties and we'll plant it in a field. We'll plant 100 acres and we'll get hundreds of millions of plants from individual plantings. This is our production from last year. We had 1.7 million pounds of raspberry roots, 32 million pounds of, or 32 million raspberry container plants, 6.2 million blackberry container plants, 3.1 million blueberry container plants, and 410 million strawberry plants. All of this was produced on roughly 600 acres in Mexico and 8,000 acres in the United States. The fruiting districts, we have Watsonville, Salinas, Santa Maria, Oxnard, Florida, Mexico, Europe, Australia, China, and there's more there. And for part of what I do, I ship plants all over the world. I've just got a new order that I'm going to be shipping material to China. We have one that just shipped to Australia and to Europe. And we've already planted all of our United States planting and fruiting areas, and we should start to see fruit on them. Florida, we're already seeing the fruit. Watsonville will probably be here in about the next 2 months. Santa Maria as well. And just a fun fact of strawberries, and the amount of 8 strawberries that contain the same amount of vitamin C as an orange. And that's it.
That's pretty good. I mean, it's a lot.
That was amazing. I have to say, just because I've been to the nursery, it is just phenomenal to me how it goes from that one strawberry plant and you grow the daughters and something. James, will you tell them how do you guys preserve those plants from kind of growing season to growing season? So because obviously they don't go straight to the field that first year.
In some cases, they actually do. And for Florida, we'll harvest them from a high elevation nursery and we'll send them directly to Florida to be planted for fruit. And that happens in September, October, and we should start to see fruit by Christmas. But for our regular, everything that we're doing here in Red Bluff and around us, we harvest in January, trim the plants, and we stick them in the freezer. Hold them at about 28 degrees, and the plant can stay there for about 6 months. 6 months is pushing it. But they're held over cold storage, and when we needed the new ones, which is what we're doing right now, is pulling out all the material that was harvested in January, and we're going to start planting March 30th here in Red Bluff.
Great, thank you.
All right. I was gonna have Dana introduce our next speaker.
I think I can do that. Sorry. So thank you very much, James. I really appreciate it. Did any of the students have any quick questions specific to James, before we moved on?
There was one in the chat.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the girls from Corning were wondering, has coronavirus had an impact on your berry sales?
I'll go ahead and jump on that one if that's okay. Yes, most definitely has had an impact. I think it is a bit blurry. You can't exactly put a number to, you know, the situation is affecting demand or supply by 1 million pounds this week, et cetera. But when we definitely saw an impact was last year as things really started to shut down back in March and April of last year. On the demand side, things got very soft. So we actually had to send a lot of fruit to process. This happened with raspberries in particular. I'm not very familiar with what happened with the other 3 categories, but you did see a hit in demand. So, you know, I think we were all a little cautious about stepping outside of our homes at that point. So shoppers were just not willing to risk and, you know, go out and buy berries. They were wanting to get whatever was very basic, right, for their homes at the time, maybe toilet paper, since that was running out everywhere. But so yes, it definitely had an impact. If we look at it on the positive end, well, we can say that, you know, our growers look to create much safer conditions for our harvesters out there. So I would say that's something positive that came out of the experience, is just being more conscious of our harvesters' needs and safety.
All right, James, did you have anything to add to that as well?
No, I think she got it.
Thank you. All right, so our next speaker is going to be John Pierre, and he is also from our Red Bluff Nursery side. So if you want to kind of introduce what your role is there and what you do, I'll kind of turn it over to you.
All right, you're still muted. But we can see the picture. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, there we go. Apparently I have to unmute on my phone and the computer on Zoom. We don't use Zoom as much as I like to. So I'm John Pierre, like they're saying. I'm a little bit unique in the nursery up here, where I actually started off working in what we call the fruiting district. So working with growers down there, helping them produce fruit. And so I'm what's called an agronomist. So prior to Driscoll's, I worked for a while in potatoes and then made the switch over to berries about 3 years ago now. And I love my job. It's something I never thought I would end up doing. Growing up, you know, I never had any plans to work in agriculture. Never thought I would at all. Then when I was in college one summer, I took a job to help pay for my way through school, and it was working in agriculture, running some, you know, corn crews out there, and I loved it. And I saw these people called agronomists working out there, and they were doing the sciencey side of agriculture, which is what I wanted to get into. I didn't necessarily want to be a grower and have all the risk and stress of that, but I loved being outside, doing the science, working with plants. And so what is agronomy? I get asked that all the time. People ask what I do. I say I'm an agronomist, and they have no idea what that means. And really an agronomist is kind of that link between the very science-focused, you know, entomologists like Diego or pathologists, and the grower. We're kind of that middle ground there. I'm specialized in a few things, but, you know, very broad knowledge of a couple things. Agronomy is that, you know, knowledge of the genetics. What are these plants supposed to be doing? The physiology, what causes them to flower, to produce fruit? Meteorology, you know, soil science, nutrition, knowing how much calcium should you be giving a strawberry. You know, what do you do if your strawberries are bland? The econ, does it make sense to actually put that calcium out there? Engineering, you know, what's wrong with this irrigation system out here? Why am I getting poor uniformity? All those things kind of wrapped into one is what agronomy is. You can specialize in a couple different ones, but you end up doing a lot of them. And so that picture there is really what I picture when I think of an agronomist. It's a bunch of guys standing out in the field talking with each other saying, okay, what's wrong here? Why are these plants dying? Why are these berries small? Why do they taste bad? What can we do to fix this? That's what agronomy is. I like to think, agronomists, we speak plant. It's something that you learn over time. It's like learning another language, going out in the field and saying, okay, what is this plant thinking? A lot of times you actually hear us talking about plants like people. Like, oh, I should like it if we did this, or this is the type of thing that he's going to want us to do. And these plants almost become people to us. So it's understanding when a plant is stressed, being able to see that and knowing why. Knowing what levers you have to pull, what you can do to change that. How are we going to change fertility? What type of pests are we seeing? How can we control that? Some of those cultural practices. A really important point is that you don't have to know everything all of the time. There's a lot of times where I don't know what's going on with the plant, and that's where people like Diego come in. I'll go in and say, oh, crap, we're seeing a bunch of spider mite, or we're getting this weird mite out here flaring up. I don't know how to control it, but I know somebody who does. I'm kind of that connection, knowing, telling the grower, I don't know now, but I'll find out. I'll get that answer for you. That's a lot of what agronomy is. A lot of it's putting out fires, right? Going and you show up to a ranch and you see weird orange powder on the bottom of the leaf, or why are these leaves curly and turning brown and dying? What in the world makes this raspberry plant turn into two colors right down the middle? How about this really spiky flower? What's causing that? Being able to find out those things and helping growers to work through that and fix those issues. A lot of what I did with Driscoll so far has been working with raspberries, and they're probably my favorite of the 4 berries to work with. I've done some work with all of them, but raspberries are pretty cool. We're able to do a lot of crazy things with them that you wouldn't even think is possible. So I started off helping growers switch from growing in soil to growing in substrate. So taking those plants and putting them into pots. By putting them into pots, that lets us make those plants mobile. Raspberries, they're biennial, take 2 years to grow, perennial roots, but at the top usually takes 2 years. By putting them in pots, it lets us move them around, change densities, lets us put them into cold storage in winter so that they can get lots of chill, happy plants, they like cold winters. And then it also lets us kind of delay spring. Watsonville, spring happens when it happens. Some years it's January, February it starts warming up. Some years it's March. What this lets us do is tell these plants when we're going to take them out of the cooler. It also lets us delay spring until like May or June, pulling them out later. It lets Crystal and Carmelo do some pretty cool things there with that production curve, getting fruit all year long. Lets us have a lot of fun with these plants. It sounds like travel is a big interest to this group. So with Driscoll's, I've worked in 2 countries, sent plants to quite a few countries. I've grown all over California, all over the West Coast, done some stuff for Florida. Prior to Driscoll's, I worked for a company called Simplot, working with potatoes. And I grew potatoes in 24 states, grew it in 3 different countries, all over the place. It's let me travel. Like Carmelo said too, that can get old after a while. So Simplot, I was gone 110 nights a year. That was a bit too much. I had my family, want to spend more time with them. So with Driscoll's, I've been able to control that, gone maybe 40, 50 nights a year, but I can take my family with me. We can take a trip over to Eureka where we're doing strawberries on a trial and spend the night there. Go down to Watsonville and my family will go to the beach while I work all day. There's a lot of cool opportunities, cool places you get to go in agriculture, especially in agronomy, being, one of those specialists. They send you all over the world and it's really cool. And so that's my presentation. I don't know if there's any questions from the group.
That was really wonderful, John. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation.
I have a question.
Yep.
So out of the states and the countries that you grew in, like you said potatoes, right?
Yes.
So which one was your like most favorite? Like were they exotic or were they different? Like, was there like a lot more like complex with like the areas you had to grow in?
Yeah, so I mean, Michigan, I don't know why, but I always loved going to Michigan. We went to some really pretty places, and you know, I'm all about food, lots of cool restaurants, some of the places I went to in Michigan. Florida was a lot of fun, you know, going from where I was at before in Idaho, freezing in January, to planting potatoes and having it be 80 degrees in January. That was pretty cool. Mexico was fun. There's a picture, the bottom right here, you can see that lighthouse. I'm at a place there called Prince Edward Island. It's like the very corner of Canada in the Atlantic Ocean, little island. And of Green Gables, if you watch that, that's Prince Edward Island. Beautiful place. Really cool to grow there.
There's actually a vet school there as well.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. That was actually really perfect. And our next speaker is Isabel. Dina, did you want to go ahead? Sorry.
Sure. Our next speaker is going to be Isabel, and she is kind of the front face of our Driscolls here in Red Bluff. And so she's put together a little speech to talk about what she does and stuff. One thing I think as you students are, learning about these companies and things, we always hear kind of about the big career end positions, but there's so much more to each and every one of these companies. And with farms, we really want to kind of show the big variety of career opportunities and jobs that go into supporting and making these companies run. So I feel like Isabel's position is really, really an important one, and one that is available not only with Driscoll's, but with, majority of the companies. So Isabel, I'll turn it over to you, and we can go from there. You're muted. Let's unmute you.
Okay, I think I found it.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isabel, and I've worked for Driscoll's for almost 2 years. And my favorite fruit or berry is the strawberry. I got hired here as a temp to cover maternity leave for one of the administrative assistants. Little did I know that I was going to get a full-time position as a clerk. One of the key requirements was to be bilingual, to speak Spanish, because most of the employees here speak Spanish. My role in the nursery is to give support to the managers and supervisors and even the employees. Answering phone calls, receiving calls from vendors, directing them to other employees if appropriate, calling vendors to follow up on deliveries, processing incoming and outgoing mail, placing orders for like safety supplies for greenhouses. We use lab coats, exam gloves, protective glasses, and much more. Also ordering soil, bin, tractors, and forklifts that we need to rent. For example, right now we're doing harvest cleanup, so we need all of those equipment, all that equipment to do that. Greeting visitors to the workplace and attending them and while they're here. Also payroll. That's an important one, because if I don't do my job right, then people don't get paid. So on Monday mornings, I have to make sure that everyone on the team has their hours in the system. Sometimes the clocks that are used don't scan the clock in and clock out time. So I have to enter them manually. I make sure that the activities in the system are correct with what they are doing. I print out the timesheets and have employees verify the hours on the timesheets match the hours that they worked. Also, processing invoices. I gather the invoices and I have the approving manager sign the invoices and code them to the correct project. Coding to the correct project and category is very important. Once I have invoices signed and coded, I scan them and email them to our AP department in Watsonville. I make sure to keep a copy on my desktop just in case I need it in the future. And then also reconcile credit cards. This helps us to verify the transactions that are both like complete and correct and valid. That way we know that that's what we spent. I help 5 people do that, plus I do my own. I'm also in charge of the vehicles, so making sure that if any vehicle, like a company vehicle, needs any repairs, to make the call to send them to get it repaired. Also preventative maintenance, like getting oil changes, tire rotation, anything like that. And then I also do filing, just putting all of the invoices away and anything else that needs to be filed away. And I think that's it. Anyone have any questions?
I'm gonna say that's it. That's quite the jack of all trades. You're the go-to person, right? I love it. I love it. But I think, you know, just showing that there's people that have to oversee making sure all of those little details are, you know, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. Otherwise, it wouldn't all come together. So, have you noticed a change since the COVID has happened in how you guys are doing things, or have you had any changes that way? Are you still working in the office, or did you work from home for a period of time?
When it first started, I think it was last year in March I think it was the 16th of March when they sent us home. They told us we all had to start working from home for a while. And we were sharing the time in the office so that not everyone was in the office. So I would come in, I want to say 2 to 3 times a week. And some days it was just half days and the rest I would work from home. But I think it's been like 4 or 5 months where I've came back pretty much complete back to the office.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there any students that have any questions for Isabel?
I have a question. Did you think you would do ag when you were younger?
I don't know. Before this job, I was a certified medical interpreter, so I don't think that this was part of my plan, but I lived in Washington before and I wanted to be closer to my family, and my family lives here in Anderson. So this was a good opportunity for me.
Washington, did you live?
What was that?
Where in Washington did you live?
I lived in Mount Vernon. It was an hour north of Seattle.
Yeah, I used to live in Seattle. I have family. I have a sister that lives in Mount Vernon. Small world.
I liked it there, and I like doing the interpreting because I liked helping people. That's what I like doing, and I feel that that helped me with this job.
Yeah.
Being able to help people and knowing a second language really helped. And I encourage all the students to take a second language because that will help you in your future.
Thank you so much. And I think now we're ready to move on to the Watsonville side of things. And we're gonna have Crystal Verduzco cut in front of Diego, if that's okay.
Thank you, Letty, and thank you, Diego. Let's see if I can get this presentation on the screen. Okay, are we seeing the big screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great, thank you. So as Letty introduced me, my name is Cristal Verduzco, full name. I work alongside Carmelo in raspberries. I was gonna say strawberries, which is very random. So I was very surprised to hear that he loves blueberries. They're his favorite berry, and I'm just like, what? But really, we love all the berries. At the end of the day, can't say that any of them are bad, right? So to kick things off, I wanted to ask the group to please use the chat and answer the following question. What color are raspberries? So let's see what answers we get. Okay, red, yeah. And another red. Any others? Anyone want to go wild? Throw something random out there. Pinkish red, okay, maroon. Awesome. All righty. So let's see. There we go. Taste the rainbow, guys, because raspberries come in a bunch of different colors. Shapes can be a little off as well, and size. You know, you've got your small guys over here. So you do have the traditional red raspberries. You have yellow or gold, as we call the category. And then we have these berries called sunshine, which are mostly that yellow, but also have a tint of a rose coming through. And then there's like a purple and then almost like a blackberry color. So there's a bunch out there, but what we're used to as consumers is really just seeing that typical red raspberry out there at the stores. So just a bit of raspberry trivia there to kick things off. And now to take a step back, a big step back actually, let's go back to my childhood. I grew up as the daughter of a farm worker. My mom harvested throughout most of my childhood and teenage years. So really for me, my first exposure to agriculture was just, you know, back in the 90s, hanging out with her as she harvested fruit in the fields. And I would be there with her, you know, playing games with other kids. So this is before, you know, those laws came about where children couldn't be out there, but very good memories for me. And really that's what stemmed my interest in agriculture. But as I headed into high school and, you know, I had to think about what I wanted to study, and, you know, I knew I loved agriculture. I loved those moments that I shared with my mother and with family, but I had no idea how to go about it, right? How do I make a career out of it? I mean, I didn't want to harvest like my mom did, right? I wanted to do something more. So in high school, this teacher here, Mark Hall, someone who continues to be a big mentor in my life to date, he knew that I loved agriculture. And so he, luckily for me, got in touch with Farms Leadership. And so said, hey, you know, there's this program, they expose high schoolers to ag. I think you would really like it. And so, you know, it worked out for me. We talked to Susan Douglas, who was our coordinator, something like what Letty and Dana do for you guys. And so I got together with my friends, and I actually asked, you know, I think it was a group of 5 friends. I said, hey, you know, I really love agriculture. Can you guys do this with me so that we can have this program at our high school? And it just truly worked out. The program exposed me to a bunch of different things, you know, vineyards, the NRCS, which for me turned out to be a big deal because actually in making connections there with the NRCS, I eventually got my first internship in agriculture in the actual industry. So it was just great. It was a wonderful experience. So based on my experience there, you know, thinking about what I enjoyed as a kid and then what the program really exposed me to, I decided that Cal Poly San Luis Obispo was the way to go. My actual career, I wasn't sure what direction I would go in. So I said, let's go for something pretty broad. I studied agricultural business management. And so that really just left it wide open for me to work in really any part of the industry, right? So I worked hard in high school, got to Cal Poly, joined clubs, had a lot of fun. That's, you know, I want to just make a shout out for that because that's really where you make your connections, start, you know, back as far as being in college. This guy here, Hugo Alameda, I work with this guy to date. So this picture here is probably 14 years ago or so. And we're still, you know, working together now in the berry industry. So you never know who you're going to meet along the way. And as I mentioned, you know, I interned. My first one was with the NRCS. I did an internship over the summer with a vineyard called Vino Farms in Lodi. I interned in the seed industry and the walnut industry as well. And so, you know, it really just exposed me to all these different branches in ag and helped me really decide what I didn't want to do. So, you know, working in the hot sun where these vineyards were located just wasn't for me. And down the line, you know, lucky for me, I was able to find a position with Driscoll's. But right out of school, actually, I ended up working for a bakery. I think most of you here are familiar with Sara Lee or Beanbowl, who actually bought them out while I worked for them. So my first job was a little farther away from the actual fields. It was in production, managing a bakery plant in Stockton, California. It was a graveyard shift position. So that meant that I went in at midnight and was out by 8 or 10 the next morning. It was terrible. So just to say the least, right? It was a very hard point in my life, but I'm so very thankful for it because I learned so much from the experience. So that I carry with me today. So yeah, eventually, like I mentioned, this guy here, Hugo Alameda, this is us now present day working for Driscoll's. We're holding here a GPS unit that we use to measure all of our raspberry and really all the berries, right? So it's just great. Again, network. It's very important to just, you know, make connections along the way. You just never know. And so, yeah, like we mentioned before, I work with Carmelo in managing raspberry supply and forecasting. And really what that means is that I get to go out and just have firsthand exposure to really anything. My job at the end of the day is to really understand what's happening in the field, understand our potential as far as yield goes and how many boxes of raspberries each area can produce. And so things like raspberry planting practices or, it's actually a video, sorry, forgot about that. New varieties, selections that come out. These are actually blackberries. I did spend some time working with blackberries as well in my first years with Driscoll's. New harvest practices. You know, our harvesters currently go out there and carry crates with them or buckets with them as they harvest along the rows. And so we've had different concepts developed along the way where they can now push a cart if they want to. So it's great to see all of these things firsthand and just really just try to interpret what will happen with the crop. So in the end, for me, my big message for the group is just follow your passion. You know, if it's agriculture, that's wonderful. If it's something else, whatever, be it, you know, art, or I don't know, being a baseball player, whatever it is, just do whatever makes you happy. The way, or what I tell my nieces and nephews is, you know, in life, you're going to have to work. You might as well work doing something that you love, right? So it just so happens that for us, it is ag. And it's worked out, you know, hard work goes a long way. Again, network, intern, it's very valuable. You just never know. And good luck to everyone. I'm excited to hear any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Crystal. And if you guys heard from her story, she is Farms alum. So we are so excited to have her as a part of our legacy.
I have a quick question.
One question. Go ahead, Jesus.
Where can I find the golden yellow raspberries or what are they? Raspberries?
Yeah, the gold or sunshine category. They're very seasonal. They're a little more finicky to grow, so we can't convince our growers to take on more acres. So it is challenging. I would say you should try maybe the middle of summer, like in June, and maybe going to like a Safeway or Vons. They'll probably have some.
Okay, thank you. I just have to have one.
Right. And then the students at Corning, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah. What was our question? We asked it at the beginning of your presentation when we were talking about the berry colors. Are the different colors different strains of berries?
So I think my coworkers here might have a better answer, but yes, there are different varieties. So different genetics altogether, but still within the raspberry family.
Thank you. And then Crystal, is it true you're going back to school as well?
It is true. Thanks, Letty, for the reminder. Yes. So, back in early 2020, when we found ourselves at home, that itch came about again, and I started thinking about doing my master's. And so really it was the middle of May, I think, when I thought about this. I got in contact with Cal Poly professors, just asking questions, right? And I thought I would be applying in 2021 sometime. But no, they were like, hey, we've extended the deadline because of COVID. You should apply. I applied, and I'm now finishing up my second quarter at Cal Poly. So I'm getting closer to finishing, thank God. It is a lot of work, guys. Once you're, working full time and doing school, it's a lot, but I'm sure it's going to pay off. So again, I think for me, this experience just highlights what asking questions can turn into, because I just simply said, hey, I like this department. I'm going to email the head of the department, and it worked out. So I highly encourage everyone to just reach out for what you want.
Is getting to school different from when you go straight out of high school to like when you're a much older person? Like, is there a difference when like getting into college?
I guess I would say, as far as the process goes, there are not many differences because the requirements are the same. But as far as, time management goes, yes, it's a lot different. When you're younger, I think we have that luxury of just focusing our attention on school, right? Or, that's where it should be. But now, like I mentioned, since I'm working, and that is the reality for many people, right? They have to work to put themselves through school. It's a lot harder. And yeah, I'm older, so I'm tired.
Yeah, with that, to echo that really quick, I did the same thing where I was already working and went back and did my master's. It's, if you're doing a master's, it's a little more common to see that. Working professionals going back to school for a PhD, more common you just go all the way through, finish your PhD, either go into academics or more of a scientist position. But yeah, the master's side, one plug for that is a lot of times companies have programs where they'll help pay for your master's. So like mine, I was still working for Simplot, and they paid for all of my research for my master's. And my project was something I did for them, wrote my thesis on something for them, and they had a lot of great connections. So it's a good way, you don't have to go straight from bachelor's to master's. You can do both, or switch it up to whatever works for you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so I'll also share that Driscoll's is paying for about 40% of my master's. So it's just wonderful to have that support. So yeah, it's never too late to continue. So just keep it in mind.
All right. Thank you for your presentation, Crystal. I know you got to jump off to another meeting. But I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Diego Nieto, who is an entomologist. And for some students, typically, if this was a typical year, we would be in the lab with Diego, probably looking at microscopes and bugs.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Go ahead.
All right. Let me just take a brief moment to second all the wonderful advice that's been provided up to this point. I hope all the students that are listening have been paying attention. Yeah, let me just second a few things off the top of my head. Being bilingual, such an asset. If you already are, please recognize it as such. If you're not, it's not too late, obviously. If you're interested in agriculture, obviously a very large segment of the agricultural community in the States is Spanish speaking. The growth of agriculture by American companies in Mexico is really happening at a rapid pace. So more and more business is happening down there. It's a really great place to work. Obviously, if you speak Spanish, it's all the better. So yeah, definitely bilingualism is pretty awesome. Yeah, follow your passion. That's also a big one. We work really hard. That's a lot easier because we love our jobs. I can't imagine doing something and working this hard for this many hours if I didn't enjoy what I did. So that's a big one as well. Oh, and then for students who are interested in science, this is a little bit different. Writing is not often emphasized as an important skill. Often you hear about math, but my gosh, writing is so important. As you go through the process, and this isn't just for entomology, it's just science in general. If you're trying to write a grant proposal, in other words, get paid, that's based on the strength of your writing. If you get that proposal, then you have to write grant reports. If that project goes smoothly, you have to write a manuscript for publication, which is judged entirely on the strength of your writing. So yeah, please be a good critical writer. Okay, enough of that. Entomology, so the study of insects. This is such a cool field because it's so diversified, right? It encompasses so many disciplines other than strictly the study of insects. There's, and at least in agriculture, I mean, really what we're dealing with, it's heavily manipulated ecosystems, right? I mean, they're managed and they're determined by people, but all the ecological principles that you learn about either in ecology or biology, they're still at work. So we get to, those rules are still in play, right? Natural selection is a real obvious one with all kinds of interesting implications. So you get to study those and think about those and consider those. And then on top of that, you get to layer all these things that John and everyone else has mentioned. The description of how multifaceted agronomy is was a really great example. That all gets layered on top of this. So think just very broadly, think about economics and cultural growing traditions and politics and legal statuses of different materials, and it all determines how these systems are managed, and that ends up being impactful, right? Particularly when we're talking about pest management, the way that these things are approached and executed, whether or not they're successful or not, has a huge impact. First, financially, right? There are millions of dollars at stake, and so obviously we want to see that go the right way. And then also has big impacts on agricultural communities, on the labor force, and on the environment. So there's a lot at stake, and thankfully it's there's some good folks working in the field. Also, let me quickly point out, with respect to pest management, man, our job is not one thing, it's so many different things. And again, hopefully you've gotten that from John's talk and Crystal's talk and everyone's talk. There's just so much going on. So within entomology, we work on phenotyping, right, which is trying to look at different physical or chemical characteristics within different varieties that we have within our Driscoll's plant base, to see which ones can be beneficial for resisting or tolerating pest presence or damage. Avoidance, pest avoidance is big if we can accomplish that. So using traps or baits, pheromones, which are chemicals that insects use to communicate with one another, or pheromones, which are chemicals that are emitted by plants that can be attractive or repellent, can also be used. Pollinators is a really big issue. I don't know if you guys have heard about bees and what's going on, honeybees, but honeybees are used in berries to pollinate our crops. And so making sure that that is done optimally, safely is super important. We're even looking into alternate pollinators, right? So bumblebees and other native bees can be really helpful as well. Obviously, insecticides are a key part of pest management, so that is assessed and studied as well. Increasingly, biopesticides, bioinsecticides are commercially relevant, and so trying to figure out how those work and how they can be implemented effectively is super important. farmscaping. There are lots of different terms for this, but basically diversifying an agricultural setting is something that I really enjoy doing. So you can imagine, I mean, well, simplified landscapes, in other words, with just one plant, it's not ecologically balanced. It creates imbalances, and so often you need chemical solutions to that. If you diversify the landscape, that creates a little bit more balance, which, so adding plants that are attractive or that provide important resources like pollen and nectar for beneficial insects, that's super important. Something that I really enjoy working on. I thought I'd kind of let just the insects be the stars of the show here. So we'll just go through a couple common pests that are kind of interesting and discuss them briefly. And so this is white grub. It's a pest particularly in central Mexico, Jalisco and Michoacan. And there they refer to as gallina ciega, blind chicken. And that's because the adult scarab beetles, they're kind of clumsy as they're very large, and they're kind of clumsy as they fly and walk around. They lay eggs that hatch out into grubs, right? These really large larvae that feed on roots in the soil. So you can see they're pretty big. And on a baby strawberry plant, that can be pretty damaging. And so trying to figure out ways to monitor and sample without having to dig up a strawberry plant is an interesting challenge in and of itself. And then anytime you have a pest that's in the soil, that involves its own sort of extra set of hurdles for getting something that's effective and safe and verifying all that. An interesting solution, and we're now venturing into the discipline of biological control, which is using good guys to fight bad guys, right? So you're using beneficial organisms to try and manage pests. So here we have a grub, we have a white grub or gallina ciega, and it's being managed by nematodes. Those are those little, looks like spaghetti inside the white grub. So these are little parasitic insects that are beneficial. They're applied to the soil and they find a host, in this case a pest, grub, and they start emitting bacteria, which breaks down the host, right? And then the nematodes start feeding and reproducing. And one kind of fat grub can produce millions of nematodes that once they're done feeding on that one host, and they then leave that host and go through the soil looking for other pests. So they can be pretty cool. They're really good for soil pests. This is a very unwelcome guest that's made itself a home in California, North America. This is the spotted winged Drosophila, or spotted wing fruit fly. So this is a new fruit fly, relatively new, to much of the world. And it's different than the common fruit flies that we find in our kitchens. They're commonly, fruit flies are only a pest if you think about when you have a problem with fruit flies in your kitchen. It's usually in the summer, and it's usually when you've left fruit out and it gets overly ripe and soft, and you end up with really kind of quasi-rotted fruit. This is different. So I've circled what's called an ovipositor on this female fruit fly here. And you can see it's kind of like a saw, like a serrated knife. And she can use that to cut into ripening fruit tissue and deposit eggs into that fruit, which is very, very, very different than from the perspective of trying to harvest sweet fruit, sweet berries. So that can be definitely a challenge. This is a pupal parasitoid. Parasitoids differ from parasites. Parasitoids intend on killing their hosts, which is good for us. So this is a biocontrol agent that is laying an egg. So this female insect is laying an egg. She's using her ovipositor to deposit an egg inside of the spotted winged Drosophila pupa, right? So she's going to lay an egg into the pupa. That egg's going to hatch out into a larva and kill the pest. And then it's going to produce more wasps. So the wasp is the good guy. Obviously, the fruit fly is the bad guy. And here we have two-spotted spider mite. This is super common. It's awful. It's brutal. This is a mite, so it has more than 6 legs, and it's super, super, super small. By the time it becomes obvious or super conspicuous, it's far too late. So it's called a spider mite because it creates webbing But by the time you see webbing on a plant, you have a really bad outbreak of this pest. Strawberries, the berry industry in general, but strawberries in particular, really a pioneer in augmentative biological control, which is the commercial production and mass release of beneficial organisms. Right, this is another predatory mite, not an insect, but a mite that eats the pest mite, and so it's industry standard for growers, organic and conventional, to release thousands and thousands and thousands of mites, beneficial mites per acre, to combat these pest mites. And in doing so, they save many, many miticide applications. This is a lygus bug, another super common pest. It's a true bug. It has almost like a pointed straw as a mouth part. This is it on this is an immature lygus bug on a strawberry flower. This is a super close-up shot. You can see it's inserting that mouth part into a strawberry seed, the achene. And as it does that, it sucks out it injects salivary enzymes, which break down the tissue, and it injects all of the sugars out of the plant tissue. And it creates what's called cat-faced or crooked fruit. Sometimes they're called jungle fruit. Anyway, it's not marketable, and it looks kind of gnarly. There is a parasitoid. Let me see. Here we go. So this is another beneficial insect. This is a parasitic wasp, and she is struggling with this lygus bug nymph to lay an egg. And as soon as she successfully inserts her ovipositor right there, then she's laying an egg inside of that nymph. There's also a paralyzing agent. So that nymph is going to be chilled out for a little bit, but then it'll wake up and it'll keep on going about its business. That nymph is going to continue to grow and feed and do whatever it does with that egg that turns into a larvae on the inside of it. And it continues to eat all the organs. And before that nymph becomes an adult, then the larva emerges. And so here's that larva that is outside, and it's kind of big and kind of gnarly looking. But that'll pupate and then become another wasp and repeat the whole cycle all over again. So every single time that a biocontrol agent can do its thing, if that's done at a sufficient scale, then you don't need to spray an insecticide. So that is, again, implications there are sort of important. So these are helpful. And with that, thank you very much, and happy to take any questions if you have any.
I have a question real quick.
Yep.
So like, do you, or to on anybody, I have a question. Like, what careers are available if in like is there a way to like get a career where like you get hired here in America but like move somewhere else?
Sure.
Like permanently stay there?
Yeah.
Just because I'm afraid that like with ours, like you mentioned, I was afraid I was just gonna I have a question because, well, regarding like at my family farm, we produce commercial cattle here and in Jalisco, but the majority of our farms, we are getting too close to the city, or the city is getting too close to us. And predominantly all the property around our ranch are berries now.
Yep.
All of them. So we are the other day, our last like the herd just disappeared, and I'm afraid that we're gonna have to turn into, you know, more on the berry side, because everybody's our berries, like all our neighbors, everything turned into berries.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just had a curiosity of actually maybe wanting to move there and like, you know, just explore other careers. But
there will always be a need for skilled, bilingual, bicultural individuals. Always.
Even without some of the bilingual skills, I mean, Diego's boss, if I remember right now, he just got back from China and he was there for a couple months. You know, my boss's boss, he started off in Watsonville in a trim shed, went down, started the nursery in Mexico, came back for a little while, then he went and he started Driscoll's in China and was there for like 5 years and just got back. You know, my boss before here, is from the UK, and he just came to the US about 3 years ago now, and now he runs the strawberry business here in the US, or the supply planning side of it.
Oh, thank you. That's very cool.
So am I understanding it correct? So how does it work? The growers, if they have an issue in the field, they call the agronomist, like John, and then John goes to assess and then send samples to you, Diego?
If necessary, for sure. Yeah. The entomology department is technically housed within global R&D. And so our number one task is to ask big questions and try to come up with big answers, rather than kind of day-to-day firefighting. Yeah, sometimes we put on our firefighter hat as well.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any additional questions? Or even comments about some of the things that you've seen or heard today?
It's
Kevin?
just so cool.
Oh, Irene, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry. Diego, I had a quick question.
It's like she knows you're talking and she wants to keep you from doing that.
Yeah. Those beneficial insects, do you guys grow those, or do you guys purchase those from outside, like insectaries?
So for a very long time, there were only commercial insectaries, which would rear them and then sell them. The competition for those products has gotten to be so fierce, and agricultural companies, farmers, have gotten to be so large that they've said, well, you know what, we actually increasingly have the capacity, and we're kind of tired of the lack of reliability or the higher prices, so we'll just do it ourselves. And yeah, so and that's been for us one of the coolest opportunities, is to work with a Driscoll's grower who's trying to do this themselves and needs some help in various ways. And so to be there on the ground level is really neat.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool. Great opportunity. And I love hearing kind of from everybody, and how it truly is a big team, and everybody needs everybody. Everybody's position really plays such an important role into the big picture. That's really cool.
Go ahead, Irene. I think you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring it back to what was said in the first presentation about workplace culture, and the fact that all these different departments are working together as family. That's just so important, and I love that there's been this kind of insistence on that as the ethic there. And I'd certainly encourage the youth, as they look at jobs, look at the workplace culture. And then, Diego in particular, I had seen these wasps represented in insect documentaries, where they were showing this sort of it was like a caterpillar, and it was out in the wild. This looks like a kind of an aggressive activity, and it's really great to see it in a positive light, that it's being used, that they're the good guys, and that they're actually bringing about something that's positive for the growth of these plants. So I appreciate that perspective.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Do you guys face challenges when you try to introduce new or either chemicals or bacteria or insects to foreign countries, or does let's say you just introducing something you found here and implementing it in China and Mexico, or
Yeah, for sure. So depending on how I understand your question, there are challenges. Either if we're trying to advocate for something domestically, then we're fighting and pushing up against the status quo, which is a powerful foe. And if we're trying to advocate for something across borders, then yes, the bureaucracy of that is daunting. And so we're trying to get some organic products over to Mexico right now. as much as I love Mexico, it's an incredibly bureaucratic country, remarkably so. And so that's been, yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, that's where I was trying to like face my question to, because a lot of farmers have had like so much trouble bringing in new. I mean, I'm talking about like in like commercial goats, and it's just, or just anything. It's so hard to get certain things to Mexico or into Mexico.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter which way you go. If you're trying to bring things into the states that are alive, then you're dealing with APHIS, which is a sub-department within the USDA, and that is a nightmare. And sometimes for good reason, right? They're trying to protect domestic ag, and they have a lot on their plate, and they're doing a good job. And then, yeah, I mean, a lot of the problems that we have are because organisms, big or small, move around from one country to the other, where those natural checks aren't in place. And so there's a reason for that, but it doesn't make it any less easy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one point with that, whenever you go between countries, you always fill out the form. It's like, are you bringing in any pests or any, plant material or food? Well, like as the nursery, that's what we do, is we move plants around. So we have a couple people who that's their whole job, is managing the complexities of how do you get things across the border, what regulations. Some of our plants we have to wash, some of them have to have special chemical treatments, some of them, there's all these regulations on moving between countries, and that's a whole team of people. That's their whole job, is compliance with that.
That sounds cool. Thank you.
Great question, Jesus. I think your insight too on the work you do in Mexico as well with your dad is very helpful in this matter. All right, I think we're at 3:30 almost. We can take maybe one more comment. Kevin, I know you've been quiet. Did you want to say something, or?
I mean, I've been trying to find a good question to ask, but I mean, I'm just gonna ask someone a question that was kind of similar to Jesus's. What is something that makes it? I guess just a cultural element that makes it hard when it comes to like trying to move a product or a certain, yeah, just like a product or an advancement, whatever the heck it's called, into like another foreign country. Like what cultural barriers are there, I guess?
One thing that I've noticed is countries don't always operate on the same time schedules or on the same, plan. Things are constantly in flux. I mean, the last few years, as we've tried to get steel from China into the U.S. so we can build those hoops, to grow berries under, it's been almost impossible. They'll say it'll be here in March and it shows up in May. Or when they ship it from China, the tariff rate is one number, and then, 2 months later when it shows up, it's gone up 15-20%. And so that instability, I think, is the biggest issue that I've seen. It's just always changing, and staying on top of it's pretty difficult.
And then I agree with everything John just said. I would add, and this is more a comment on the last year. You can be on a Zoom call with farmers, scientists, business folks, and salesmen from both the US and Mexico. So there's English and Spanish, and different rules and regs, and different backgrounds and context for understanding a situation, layered on top of translations and cultural, things that may or may not be straightforward, in addition to the biases and strengths that we all have within our own discipline. And so that is not a good situation to try and problem solve. We do the best we can, and surprisingly, it's been okay thus far. But it's a situation that's just rife for misunderstanding.
Thank you. I just totally appreciate everything you guys have presented. I personally learned a lot on the nursery side of things and how you guys do things out there. So I really appreciate those presentations. Dana, did you have any final comments before we?
Same. I just really appreciate you guys and your time. I know your time is very valuable, and I really appreciate you guys investing into these students that were here and that will watch it in the future, because there was a lot of really important things and great lessons for them to learn. So thank you.
All right, and with that, I will go ahead and stop the recording, and everybody have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.